Hello, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome back to another episode of Connected and Committed Podcast. As you can see, I'm wearing my suit, which means I mean business. I'm kidding. I just wanted to wear it today because I just
So
wanted
it's a
to wear
rental.
it. It's a right. I rented it from Newly. If you're watching on YouTube, if you know what Newly is, doesn't matter. I'm not sponsored. It's really just something I really like, and I haven't been able to wear it online yet. And so I'm like, oh, listen, I'm gonna wear it in this podcast, and then you'll see a reel on it, and you'll be like, whoa, she means business. Just kidding, but I just really like the suit.
It's a linen suit.
It's linen. It's linen, is it?
Yeah.
Oh,
I think so.
no, it's not light.
I mean, that looks like linen,
Okay.
but it can be thick.
Okay, I'm wearing a linen suit and it's yellow, and I wore it to church the other day, and I looked like I was about to go to a business meeting, and it was really cool. I feel very powerful in the suit.
I'm just wearing a t-shirt.
Yeah. Hope you guys had a great week so far, a great weekend. We are going to. I like jumping into topics. I don't know if I can talk about a filler thing, but I don't really have anything.
It's fine. We don't have anything to say.
We want to talk about this concept of Christians specifically having this fear that their partner is going to take away from their quote unquote God spot. And that sounds so kind of random. If you're not a Christian, you're like, what are you talking about? But I know a lot of Christians have felt this way of, I'm so worried that I'm thinking about my partner so much and loving my partner so much. I'm worried that they're going to take over. And then I'm just like, not going to have, I'm going to put God second and my partner first.
Yeah.
And so we're going to talk about this concept because last week we kind of talked about this feeling of the obsession not needing to be the biggest thing, but sometimes the opposite happens where you're worried about it. You're worried about thinking about your partner too much. And so
I think it's Christians.
As Christians specifically, and maybe not, but like for at least we've heard it a lot in the Christian circles that concept shows up a lot, and they're really freaked out about it.
Yeah, I mean, that was a thing for me before.
Same.
It was like this thing of, I feel like when I was starting to have feelings for someone and you start thinking about them a lot, if it's like, oh my gosh, like they're becoming an idol. And it's like, wow, like I should have my thoughts like so focused on God all the time, and if it's not the case, then I'm like choosing someone over God, and it's like, it's almost this thing of like, I can't love someone and love God at the same time.
Yeah,
it's like, oh my gosh, like I shouldn't be obsessed like that. It's a sin.
Yeah, and I think too, there's always a verse I feel like a lot of people quote of like when Paul says, like pretty much like it's not hard, but it's better for you to be single because if not, then like you're good. Like pretty much when you're in a relationship, you have to like love both people. It's like people quote that verse a lot, and it's not even the exact context of what it is.
What is that verse?
You know when Paul says that.
I mean, for me, the one I'm thinking about when you say that is like, it's better for you to it's better for you to be single. Okay, sorry, I thought about the one, it's better for you to be married and to burn.
Right. Well, that's what he says. It's like that's a following verse. Of
okay.
But if you can't pretty much control yourself, then get married because like that's very very paraphrased. But a lot of people take this specific verse out of context, and they put that in the perspective of, oh my gosh, well now I can't even Paul says it's hard. Paul was single and Paul had time to serve the Lord all the time, but now I'm in a relationship. I'm thinking about my partner all the time. How do I manage all this stuff? And they feel guilty, and it's this whole cycle. And again, that is not the exact verse, but it's paraphrased. I've heard people say this a lot. So what I'm referring to. If you know what I'm talking about, then you know what I'm talking about. And if you don't read too much into that because that's not exactly the context of what Paul is saying.
Yeah, read the Bible, but not like that.
Yes. But first we wanted to give a disclaimer about a way that quote unquote being obsessed could be harmful. We'll talk about that. And then if this doesn't relate to you, then we'll talk about the kind of the more common one. If you are realizing that your relationship is serving a purpose that is like you're getting your security from it, you're getting your esteem from it. This is like fulfilling like every emotional need that you have. This partner is like, oh, this person needs to be doing all this stuff and whatever. You're putting your pretty much your relationship on a pedestal. Then that can cause it to be obsessed because at this point, when that happens and you're so much like getting everything from this partner, and then you're like, oh my gosh, if I don't have them, then this means something, I'm freaking out. Then you start to cut people out of your life, and then you start to only have this relationship be the source of everything for you, and that's when it can be harmful. You don't ever want a relationship to fill every the need for you, because it can't. Only God can do that. Like
Mm.
that's a fact. Christian or not, that's a fact. Um,
Well, 'cause if they're not Christian, people will meet their emotional needs differently.
yes,
But like whether you're Christian or not, like just putting your partner at that place of like your safety, like they're fulfilling your emotional needs, like you said, like they very much feel like you need them to be this amazing person for you to feel good about yourself.
mm,
um, then that's dangerous. Whether no matter the I guess the faith you have, that's not a good place to be, and
yeah,
it's very unhealthy. Um, yeah, so just I guess that's a disclaimer of like obsession in that way is very much idolatry, and making your partner your god.
mm,
That's for sure. Yeah.
right. And that's the extreme sense. And so I think a lot of the times people are worried that's coming up. But typically, if you're so worried that that's going to come up, that's probably not where you're at. I think you're just worried that you're having this other fear of your relationship taking over this God spot, because you're thinking about your partner all the time.
Hmm.
And so that's like a different place where we want to talk about today. So that was a
Yeah.
disclaimer of, if your relationship is becoming everything for you and that's like the only source of like happiness you're getting, then that can be where it's dangerous. But
Yeah.
otherwise, we want to talk about this common topic today.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're, if you're in a good and healthy relationship, and you're Christian, but you have like the thoughts that we just talked about before, um, I guess we want to say, because we had those thoughts, like we said, we want to say that like it's normal.
Mm,
It's not, you're not making your partner a god because you think about them a lot.
yeah.
Like there's a phase of the relationship where that's totally normal, because it's something, it's something new, it's something exciting, and it's something beautiful. It's beautiful to be excited about someone like that. It's fun, honestly, because this phase is not a phase, like it's something you only get probably once in a relationship.
Mm,
um and it's a fun phase. It's something to be happy about, not something to be worried about
yeah.
and overthinking. I'm sure God is happy for you when you're able to find someone that you love so much.
Hmm.
It's kind of funny because we have people approaching us like that, about having those thoughts, and coming to the conclusion that like they can't love someone and love God at
Yeah.
the same time.
So therefore, I need to break up with my partner because of
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
because it's like, oh, God should be like, for me it was very much just the verse of like, you need to love God with all your mind, all your strength, it's like
Mm,
all your mind. I need to have all my mind and all my thoughts, be constantly thinking about God. And to be honest, that's I think it might be coming from a good place. It might be coming from a fear place, and
mm,
that's something you need to bring up to God, because you shouldn't be loving God because you're scared of Him. Like
yeah, that's good.
that's not the fear of God. The fear of God is respect and reverence and taking God seriously, but it's not being scared of Him.
Hmm.
Um, and so if you're loving God because you're scared of Him, then that's not love. Um,
That's so true.
yeah, but that's another that's another a whole
You
different
love saying that. It's
topic.
another topic.
It is though.
But
Um,
I think it's okay to harp on that just for a second, because I
okay.
think that that's people do think about that.
Yeah.
If you are so afraid that if you don't love God perfectly, then something bad is going to happen, that is a fear relationship. That is not a love relationship. I think that, like, you need to know the difference. Loving God is freedom, and loving God is being at a space where it's like, I like, love is a choice, right? And love is intentionality. But love, there's no fear in love, and we've talked about that so many times in different contexts. But I
Mhm.
think it's very clear to kind of make a distinction of, if you're, I think for me, when I was in a relationship and I was like, my relationship's going to take my God spot, quote unquote, I was worried that if I didn't love God and I was thinking my partner too much, then God was going to be like, well, sorry, you did it too much. Your relationship's over. You have to break up with them.
Yeah.
That was my fear. I was afraid that God was going to tell me I had to break up with them if I didn't love him enough. and that was based off of fear and not even based off of truth.
Yeah.
And so if you are like, I need to love God perfectly like this and this, because if I don't, then God is going to dot dot dot. There's a there's a
Punishment there.
there's a punishment there, and there's a lie that you're believing there that we have to actually address, and that is
Yeah.
not truth, and that is not who God is.
Yeah. The Bible says like there's no fear in love because fear like means punishment.
Yeah.
And there's no punishment for God's children. Like that's in the Bible. There's no more condemnation. Um, or we're getting really biblical, huh? But I mean, we said this is mostly for Christians, like this episode,
This
especially.
episode is, yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think also when people, for me, I didn't realize that, but now I realize it. But when people come up to us and are like, I can't, I feel like I can't love my partner because I'm like betraying God, by doing that and being so like in love and whatever. Um, it's kind of funny to me because it's the irony of what are we called to do though, like as God's children. We're not called to love people,
Yeah.
and it's like, are we not called to actually like leave your mother and father and then become one with someone else? Like,
Right.
isn't that like what we're called to do? But people are so worried that their partner is going to take their God spot, um, and not realize like you're called to love someone and give your life away for them. Like that's what the meaning of marriage is in the Bible.
Yeah.
It's like, especially for a man, it's like, you love your wife like Christ loves the church and gave himself for her. Like that's the call on our lives. It's like we're literally made, first of all, we're made by love. Like we're made because someone loves us. And love is in our DNA. Like this is what we're the highest call of any human being is to love.
Right.
And that's why Jesus says, like, what's the two most important commandments is to love God and then to love your neighbor as yourself. That's so. I just think there's such an irony of like that fear of like that's when you see like we say that too, is the fear is a lie.
Yeah.
Like in any type of fear, even though it may sound holy and it may sound like from God, if it's fear, it's not from God. And so just be careful that the enemy can use fear against you, and using things that may sound holy, like he did for me for so long, where like I thought I was loving God, and I was loving God, but the problem is that slowly the love was taken over by fear.
Right.
And so everything I was doing out of love, I was actually ended up doing them out of fear. And then God comforted me and said, like, you don't love me, you're scared of me. And that's an important thing of like, I think that if you have this fear of I can't love, like I'm scared that my partner's gonna take my God spot, because underneath there's this fear of like, and I'm scared God is gonna punish me for that. And it's like, well, then you're scared of God, and that's not what God wants for you. That's even another thing as well. So I think it's really important that you realize that your relationship with God is safe,
Yeah.
and it's secure. Like you need to trust yourself in that way of like, oh no, it's fine. I can love someone and love God. Like literally, I'm called to love people, and this type of romantic love and the love that tends to like marriage is like the closest human relationship you can have to the relationship you have with God. Literally, like we are God's bride. So literally, like marriage is the picture of our relationship with God on earth. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's normal, and it's not something to be afraid of. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know because I've had clients ask me this where it's like, I notice that like I don't know, I'm spending time with God less because I'm thinking of my partner, or I'm not like reading the word, or I maybe when I'm during my time with God, I'm thinking of my partner or whatever. If that is you, because Matthew and I were talking about this ahead of time, and this is a good, loving wake up call. You are more powerful than you think that you are. If you want to spend more time with God, then spend more time with God. Like that's literally as plain as that. If it's like, oh my gosh, I want to spend time with my boyfriend, but like I need to spend time with God. Okay, then tell your boyfriend to be 30 minutes late because you want to spend time with God. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like wake up earlier to spend time with God. Whatever you need to do it.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you're even when you're married, you still have a 24 hours in a day. Nothing has changed except for what you're choosing to spend your time with. That's
Yeah.
that's literally it. And you're powerful. If you want to spend time with God, if you want to read the Bible, if you want to make sure you pray, if you want to try to not think about your partner when you're during Jesus time, then just do that. You know what I mean? Like it's okay if sometimes your thoughts slip. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Don't be
Like
so hard on
don't be
yourself.
so hard on yourself. Exactly. And stop letting guilt and shame lead you. So
Yeah.
that is not going to have you spend time with God more. It's not. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
And perfection is not required of you. Like you're
Exactly.
not whenever you're spending time with God, and like you are, because I know, because I've done that, and I realize it's like you feel guilty because your thoughts are not always like 100% on God, and you start like they start going other places, then you start feeling bad,
Yeah.
and you start feeling sorry for yourself, and you're like, God forgive me, and then it's this cycle of like, forgive me, let's get back to it, and then it happens again, forgive me, you know what I mean? Like it's like you feel sorry for yourself. Well, let me tell you something. This might feel like you're like holy, because you're like, oh, I want to have all my thoughts on God, but literally you're making this about you
Hmm.
instead of making it about God. Well, every time you feel sorry for yourself, you're making it about yourself,
Hmm.
and that is not how God wants us to do. Just if your thoughts are going somewhere, whatever, that's your brain thinks, well, good news, your brain is working fine.
Yeah.
uh just go back to it, but don't skip that step of feeling sorry for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
you know but that's now in regards to like relationship is the same thing. It's like if your thoughts are going towards your partner a lot, that's fine. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's okay. You're not being, God is not upset and mad at you because your thoughts are went somewhere else. Like
Yeah.
he understands that you're not perfect, and also I don't even think that it's not about being perfect or not. I don't even think that you're doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the thing. It's like you're not doing anything wrong. Like you're just having a human experience that God was aware of when He created us.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's when Adam and Eve were created. Adam was in awe of Eve.
Mm.
That's like, you think God was upset by that? You think, okay, well, we're going to do something else now, but you think that God is so insecure that He needs you to like be constantly like forcing yourself to think about Him?
Yeah.
Like you think that God is that insecure about Himself, and also you think that He's so worried about His relationship with you that like that's how He thinks?
Mm.
No, he knows His relationship with you is safe. He knows, like it's in the Bible, like nothing can separate you from His love. So literally, like He's secure about your relationship. He knows it's safe, and I think that it's from that place, when you know there, you know that God is safe and secure in your life. You know that His spot is safe and secure in your life. From that place, then you can love people better,
Yeah.
because you're not constantly like worried. If you're worried about your relationship with God, and you're worried about your connection with God, you are your connection with God then is actually wrong.
Hmm.
Like, because your belief about your relationship is wrong. You
Hmm.
know, if you're worried about your relationship with God, that means that there's a belief you have about maintaining that relationship uh, that is wrong.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I agree. And I think too, this came in my head and I think this is might be helpful. Um, if you've ever done any like mindfulness practice or exercise ever, one of the biggest things is like, okay, you're supposed to just kind of like in the morning, sometimes I'll just sit for 5 minutes and like be silent. And just I literally would just like just sit myself. Um, and the thing that they always say is if another thought comes in your mind, you do not judge it and you don't like start feeling bad about it, or you don't start to like feel like, oh my gosh, you did it wrong. You just let it come and then just go back to the thought. That's it.
Mhm.
And it's not a big deal. And I think it's the same exact thing for when we're spending time with the Lord. Of okay, you're spending time with God, let's say you're praying, and then suddenly you're like, oh my gosh, like I don't know, I'm Johnny is so cute. I don't know, whatever. It comes to your head and you're like, oh my gosh, I should sorry, think about God, think about God, think
Yeah,
about that. You're not supposed to do that. Like even for mindfulness, you're not supposed to be like, okay, think about nothing, think about nothing, think about nothing. Like think calm, nothing's supposed to be in my mind. Like that's not what you're supposed to be doing. You're literally just sitting and like being peace. Like you're just like sitting and breathing and just like being being. That's it. And it's the same thing for when you're praying. You're not like, oh my gosh, I'm only supposed to be thinking about God. You're just like, oh, Johnny came back in my head again. I don't know why Johnny's in my head, but Johnny came back in my head again. Just like, okay, like he's there. Thank you, God, for him. Honestly, thank you for this amazing partner that you given me. Now let it go and go back to whatever you're thinking about. Or go back to whatever you're reading. Go back to whatever you're whatever. It's like not that big of a
yeah.
deal.
I even had a random thought. I was like, what if God is actually the one bringing it up to you?
Man, listen,
You know, because God can bring up anything. Like maybe he's trying to tell you something about your partner, like about like maybe a prophetic word. You know what I mean? Like
sure,
maybe he's trying to show you something, and I'm good. It's
yeah,
not.
make sure you said it
Yeah,
good.
he's not trying to show you something bad about your partner. Okay, I'm not saying that, but like good. Maybe he's teaching you how to love your partner in that
Mm,
moment.
yeah,
You know, maybe we can judge our thoughts so much. Like we think that we're expected to think a certain way,
yeah,
when literally like God can bring up anything at any moment for any reason.
mm-hmm,
And it can and he's very much, God is very much involved in our personal lives.
mm-hmm,
Like he cares about you and he cares about your relationship. Like
yeah,
it's important for you to know that. So a thought, you judge it right away, and it can be just a normal thought you're having. It's normal, your brain, you think, your human experience. But what if it's something that God is bringing up and you judge it
yeah.
because you think you're required to think a specific way, you know?
Yeah. And remember that God loves your partner too. So like
Yeah,
if it comes in your mind to pray about them and move on. You know what I mean? It's not that big of a deal. Stop thinking that your relationship with God has to be so rigid and so looks like this or I'm doing something wrong.
yeah,
Like we've been like whether we've been taught it or whether we've implied it based on what we've heard, we have our own perceptions of what we feel like our relationship with God needs to look like. And if it's not like this exact thing, then we're doing something wrong, then that's wrong. That your perception of it is wrong. It's not you spending time with God wrong. It's not you thinking about your partners wrong. It's not any of these things. It's how you have perceived what this is supposed to look like. And if you're doing that, then I feel bad. And then God is upset. And I've messed up this time. And it's like, now we've spent 20 minutes worrying about this thing when it's like, it's like not even that big of a deal. Like,
yeah,
great, it happened. I popped in my head and let's just move on.
yeah.
Like,
That's so true. And because I used to be like that too. It's like when worshiping, you know, you're in
yep.
worship at church, and it's like, oh, sorry, Lord, forgive me for I don't know, thoughts wander or whatever. It's like, no, just it's fine. Switch your focus if you want, but like don't judge yourself for it. Like
Yeah.
every time you do that, like I said, like you make it about yourself, and it's not about you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's not about how it's not about how perfect your prayers are. It's not about how perfect your worship is. It's not about how perfect you do things.
Mm-hmm.
Like if that's the case, and if you feel bad for not doing things perfectly, or things you think are supposed to be done a certain way, then you're literally like having self-righteousness issues
Yeah.
and thinking that God approves of you because you do things perfectly, and approves of your relationship because you do your relationship perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, like that's not true. um and then another thing, I think we touched on a little bit, but I want to say it again. It's like this phase of thinking about your partner a lot and stuff is normal. um and also, like we said, the podcast before that, if you don't have that phase, that's okay too.
Yep.
But like if you do have that phase, you're in a healthy and good relationship, um and you're Christian, it's normal and it's temporary.
Mm-hmm.
Like enjoy that phase, because it's not going to be there forever.
Yeah.
uh and then we're not saying that when it's gone, you know, it's going to be hard to love your partner. Then no, it's not what we're saying. Like obviously it's still going to be fine, and you're going to be fine, and your relationship is going to be great. But like your mind will start thinking about other things at some point, because your partner, like I said before, like this obsession phase is can be very much due to just the excitement and the newness of the
Right.
relationship. And that's fun, but that's going to go away at some point, because you're going to get familiar with your partner, and you're going to be more safe and more secure and more stable and comfortable in your relationship, and that's okay.
Right.
And so just be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Just
agree.
chill.
Like we're this I want you to think of this as like, oh, like we're not parents yet, but thinking of it as like your big brother and sister who are married are talking to you about this in a loving way of like, hey,
That's
like
weird.
no, but you know what I mean? Like, you know,
Aunties.
yeah, your aunties and uncles. Yeah, that's it. Your aunties and uncles. We're like, think about it in that way of like, hey, you know, like we're we're loving you. We're like we're talking to you and saying like you're making this bigger of a deal than you need to be. Just let it go. It's not that big of a deal. Change your perception in relationship with God and how you're viewing it, and just love God. Just let yourself love Him. That's it. And God's not like you making it look. Sorry, God is not needing your relationship with Him to look so specific that it becomes so like
Rigid.
rigid,
Yeah.
and then starts becoming like a prison in a sense of like if it's not exactly like this, then oh my gosh, God's upset with me, then He
Yeah.
punishes me, then it's this whole thing. That is not love, and we said it. I just want to like emphasize that point.
And
Um,
I'm even thinking about that verse where people say, that God is jealous, you know?
oh, I forgot. Yeah,
That's also one of like, oh, he's jealous because I'm thinking about. But again, it's not the kind of jealousy that God's talking about here. It's talking about people who are freaking making like idols and praying to them and literally like, yeah, literally making something else their God. We're not talking about people loving people.
yeah,
Like that's not the same thing. Making something your God and loving something is different.
mm,
It's like part of making something your God is loving them, but there's so much more to that.
yeah.
It's depending on them. It's getting your needs met by them. It's that's different. Anyways, that's a side note.
Yeah. I feel like that's. I hope that this was helpful for you. And I'm gonna send these to my some of these this episode to my clients, some of my clients who I know who've been experiencing that. If it feels like something where I know somebody who experiences this, send them this episode because we need to get freedom in letting ourselves love our partner and love God. You
Yeah.
can do both. They're not mutually exclusive. I think
No,
that's really
exactly.
important to know that is not mutually exclusive. And the more you can know that, the more freedom you're able to have.
Yeah. And guess what? You're gonna need God's help to love your partner.
Yeah.
So God is very much interested in helping you love people.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
So
So we hope this episode was helpful.
yeah.
If you enjoyed it, don't forget to share it with somebody who needs to hear it. Post it on your story, and we will repost it when Instagram notifies us that you reposted it, just so we can get this to more people. And then if you can do it, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, don't forget to subscribe if you're not subscribed. Write a review, rate it 5 stars, of course. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube, like it, comment, and share it to anybody who needs to see it.
Yeah.
Awesome. We love you guys so much, and we will talk to y'all next week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.